Good afternoon, everybody. Nice of you to come and listen to a talk that is actually very serious and maybe a little bit boring if you find it not so interesting. I'm supposed to give you a historical background of the Internal Security Act. So I'm going to begin by telling you that when we talk about the Internal Security Act or the ISA, we are basically concerned with Part 2 of the Act, which is titled Powers of Preventive Detention, and Part 4, which is titled Miscellaneous Provisions. And the two sections that are relevant are Section 8 and Section 74. On the slide is Section 8. I'll just read it out to you all. The power to detain, to order detention. Now, 8.1 states, if the President is satisfied with respect to any person that, with a view to preventing that person from acting in any manner prejudicial to the security of Singapore or any part thereof, or to the maintenance of public order or essential services therein, it is necessary to do so, the Minister shall make an order directing that such person be detained for any period not exceeding 2 years. Following that, Part B talks about the Minister has also powers to order restrictions on a particular person. Need not be detained, but restrictions will be imposed, such as restricting his freedom to speech, assembly, and to his political activities. Now, all these orders are for a period of 2 years, but it is actually indefinite because the President may direct that the period of any order made under subsection 1 be extended for a further period or periods not exceeding 2 years at a time. This means that it can go on for the rest of a person's life. And we have the longest prisoner in Singapore, who is Mr. Chia Tai Po. He was arrested when he was a legislative assemblyman, and he was detained for 26 years, plus 6 years of restrictive conditions imposed on him. So he actually had 32 years of his life under detention. Now I'll go on to the other section that is important, and that is Section 74. This section is found in the miscellaneous provisions. I don't know why it is considered miscellaneous, because this section is actually very important too. It says that any police officer may, without warrant, arrest and detain, pending inquiries, any person in respect of whom he has reason to believe. And then, when a person is detained under this Internal Security Act, he is detained for 24 hours. But that 24 hours can extend to 48 hours. And then, if the police officer has not finished his investigation, it can extend for another 28 days, which means in total, a person can be detained for 30 days. And before his 30th day ends, he can be released. And he can be released either without conditions or with conditions. And also, if the minister feels that he is to be detained, then an order is made for his detention for a period not exceeding 2 years. Now the question then we can ask ourselves is, Section 8 gives the President, who acts on the advice of the Cabinet of Ministers, the power to arrest anybody and to detain him indefinitely. The question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want him to give him this power, or do we want our judges to make the decision as to whether a person should be detained and be punished in a certain way. Here it is indefinite detention. Then I've been told that many people ask whether if we do away with giving this discretion to the president, what will happen? Do we have any laws that will replace the Internal Security Act? My answer is very simple. Why do we want to give the president this immense power over us? We have our judicial system. We should trust our judicial system. We should trust our judges. And if the government has anything against anybody, then he should be charged in open court and then be punished. By the fact that the ministers make the decision and then tell the president that so-and-so must be detained, then how do you think that our individual health will be? You know, a person can be detained for so long. Therefore, it is very simple that for me, the choice is I will not give the president or the cabinet of ministers this immense power to rule over us. The rest of the Internal Security Act are basically haphazard reproduction of various laws already found in our large collection of laws. So just a while ago I said that we have other laws that will take care of our national security. First, we have the Penal Code. It is a very old law, 1762, it was passed by the British, but it has been updated very frequently by the PAP government. And we have this Penal Code, Part 4. It's entitled Offences Against the State. It comprises sections 121 to 130A. Everything that pertains to the security of the country is taken care of by the state, by these sections under the Penal Code. So you have a situation where if you try to overthrow a government, you can be arrested and you can be charged in court and be punished by the court. We have also section 126 in this provision, which pertains to doing activities against the interests of a friendly country. Here you see that whoever commits depredation, it means plunder, or make preparations to commit depredation on the territories of any power in alliance or at peace with the government shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 10 years. Recently, it was extended to 10 years, but a few years ago, it was 7 years. So the government does pay attention to all these provisions, but why don't they use them when they have to? I'm thinking here that you will remember the Bangladeshis got into trouble in Singapore and they are presently detained. They were supposed to have downloaded from the internet some subversive documents, and they were planning some subversive activities in Bangladesh. If they had used this provision, then there would be an open trial for them. But instead, they were arrested and detained. Of course, subsequently, they charged them under the Terrorism Financial Act. So the next section that I would like to draw your attention to is Part 14 of the Penal Code, which are offences which contain sections on offences affecting the public tranquility, public health, etc. And section 267 is very interesting. It says that whoever makes, prints, possesses, posts, distributes, or has under his control any document containing any incitement to violence or counseling disobedience to the law or to any lawful order to the public servant or likely to lead to any breach of peace shall be punished with imprisonment, etc. Now, here again, I'm also thinking of the Bangladeshis. They had all these so-called subversive documents from the internet. Surely the government could have used this provision rather than the Internal Security Act against them. But if they use the penal code against these Bangladeshis, then they will have to be tried in open court. The fact that they use the Internal Security Act, to me, it means that they do not have any evidence against these people. It was just an easy way out, and they think that they should be trusted with national security issues. The other laws that can take care of national security cases are the Sedition Act. You can see here the Sedition Act, that if you publish any seditious documents, you can be charged under this act. And again here, it is open trial. Then you have the Corrosive and Explosive Substances and Offensive Weapons Act. And here, if you are in possession of any bomb-making materials or weapons, you can be charged under this act. So the other acts are the Terrorism Suppression of Financing Act, 2003. This was instituted because of the 9/11 bombing of the Twin Towers. And then you have the Terrorism Suppression of Bombings Act in 2008. This also relates to the 9/11 incident. Now, throughout the years of the internal security of the history of the Internal Security Act is a rather tragic one for us in Singapore, because over the years, it started with the British introducing this act soon after the war in 1948. And it is called the Emergency Regulations. Under these emergency regulations, many people were arrested. But I'm showing you just 3 examples of the people arrested. And these are: 1, James Joseph Pudducherry. He was an economist at that time, and he was a founding member of the PAP. Then you have C.V. Devan Nair, who later became the President of Singapore. And then John Eber, a Cambridge-educated lawyer and counsel in war crimes, founding member of the Malayan Democratic Union, and he started the first cooperative stores in Singapore. After we had partial independence in 1955 when David Marshall became the chief minister. And so he introduced the Preservation of Public Security Ordinance, or the PPSO. He was, I think, compelled to introduce this because of the Hockley bus riots. The situation went a little bit out of control, and he was compelled to introduce this this ordinance. But he was careful enough to insert in this ordinance the appeal tribunal, which is a body comprised of 3 judges who can order the release of prisoners. Unlike the emergency regulations, you have the advisory committee who has only power to advise, but no power to order release. Again, under the PPSO, we have 3 famous people who were arrested: Chin Siong, Devan Nair, and again James Joseph Pudducherry. Then, in 1963, February, you will remember Operation Cold Store, where several hundred people of the opposition parties were arrested, especially the Barisan Socialists. Almost the entire CEC was wiped out. And in that operation, you have Lim Chin Siong, again James Joseph Pudducherry, Dr. Lim Hock Siew, who was a medical doctor and Barisan Socialist CEC member, Dr. Posukai, Said Zahari, and James Foo, the father of our minister, Grace Foo. And then came 1963, when we joined Malaya, as well as our eastern neighbors, to form Malaysia. And soon after Malaysia, Operation Pecah was effected. This was just 2 weeks after the September 1963 general election. 13 Barisan Socialist MPs were elected. But even before they took their seats in parliament, 3 of them were arrested. And these 3 were Li Titong, S.T. Bani, and Lu Miao-gong. Then 2 candidates who stood for election were also arrested. And these were Tan Jin Kui. He lost to Rajaratnam by 200 votes. And Wee Tun Lip, also a Barisan candidate. Then in 1977, we have arrest of many left-wing English-educated people, and they were, again, Tan Jin Kui, Dr. An Sui Chai, who is a medical doctor, who is internationally well known for her work in Middle East. And you have G. Raman, a lawyer, Peter Kwok, an economist, Mok Kwang Yew, a biologist and computer engineer, and of course the famous Ho Kwang Ping, who was then a journalist in the Far Eastern Economic Review. Now, throughout the period from the 1950s to 1977, there were arrests. Every year there were arrests. You can get a list of the detainees in this book, which is available here. The whole list of over 1,000 ISA detainees. Then you come to 1987. But in between 1977 and 1987, there were also arrests. But in 1987, you have 22 people being arrested. And these 22, I'm sure some of you may know some of the people who were arrested, like Chew Keng Chuan, a Harvard graduate businessman, Chia Boon Tai, an engineer, Kenneth Sang, Ng Bee Leng, Vincent Cheng, who is somewhere in the room. And then you come to the bombing of the Twin Towers in 2001, and just before 2001, you have some arrests of some Muslims, and followed by more Muslims being arrested until today. Now, James will take care of that. Yeah. So, yeah, these are the 13 Barisan socialists who were elected, and 3 of them were in prison even before they took their seats in parliament because they were arrested. And I just want to conclude with this, with these words from R.L. Eber. R.L. Eber was the father of John Eber. He tried very hard to obtain the release of his son, who was actually a socialist. He got a lawyer to act for John Eber. There was a hearing before the advisory committee, a 1.5 day hearing, and at the end of it, the advisory committee advised the lawyer that they could not do anything for him, although they sympathized with him. And so, he continued to be in detention for 2.5 years. Yeah, so his father, at the end of it, wrote to the Straits Times, and this is what he said. I firmly believe that unless public opinion is swiftly aroused to the gravity of what is happening and compels a complete overhaul of the whole machinery, the cause of freedom, justice, and common decency in this country will suffer a blow from which it will never recover. These are not idle words. Let those who read take warning. Unfortunately, those who lead didn't take warning. They were the ones who oppressed us, and until today, things have probably gotten worse. And you know the situation today, and my fellow speakers will elaborate on that. Thank you.